Hello, and welcome to the Global Luxury Real Estate Mastermind with me, your host, Michael Valdez. Today's guest is somebody that I've known since I first got into real estate, which is now 16, 17 years ago, which is going to make us sound old on, but we're not. You are the managing broker for the state of Florida for Side Inc. Donnie Pingaro, welcome to the show. It's so good to see you, brother.
You as well. It's been way too long.
It has been so long, but isn't that crazy? I started sort of like right before this interview trying to figure out how long have I known him? And it was from the very beginning. It was really crazy. It was so like literally 16, 17 years, but you were already in the thick of this already in the real estate world down here in South Florida.
I was already ears deep. Absolutely.
Ears deep. Hopefully not drowning, but ears deep. But listen, for the sake of the audience, because really very humbly and thankfully, we have a really very global audience. I actually met with my podcast team this morning, and we were in 70 countries distributed, and now we're distributed in 90 countries.
Oh,
and so it's really crazy. So for those 89 other countries, or 88, that may not know who Don is, do you want to share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks again. It's so great to see you and chat together once again as we kind of come out of the COVID cloud. And yeah, like a lot of people, I got into real estate kind of by mistake. I'm a New Yorker at heart, as we've talked about many times.
Yes.
And I moved down for graduate school to get my master's in business. And the University of Miami was a great time. And the one thing I learned by getting my master's was I was not a Wall Street guy. Yeah. I was trained that way, but that was not what was in my heart. I was an entrepreneur at heart. I was working in restaurants getting through college because it was easy cash. And I just kind of rolled off with that. And I went in the olden days, used to look for job postings in the newspaper.
That's right.
Miami Herald had pool bartender, Fisher Island. I had no idea what Fisher Island was. I said, might as well just make some drinks for the summertime and see what's up in September. And I came in there and I got the interview. I came in a suit because I was an MBA guy, and the food and beverage director is like, "You've been doing restaurants for so long. Why are you looking to just be a pool bartender?" And I'm like, "Well, that's what the ad was."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Day later to take me to Fisher Island, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I never knew this place existed. This is like, you can't put it in words."
Yeah.
And day one, I met my original business partner who was running a hotel. So he had a hustler from New York and myself, a hustler from Chicago and himself. And we said, you know what, there's got to be a better way. A year later, I got my real estate license, put it with Byrne Reinhardt, which was a very big regional company at the time.
Wow.
And after the first year, I was a top producer for the company, and away we went in real estate on Fisher Island.
Now that is crazy. I did not know that that's how you ended up on Fisher Island.
Purely by mistake, like most
wow.
people in life.
And so, okay, so for the sake of those that don't know about Fisher Island, this is probably one of the most expensive zip codes in the country, right? This is where Oprah Winfrey had a home there at one point. You had all these, so you could only get there by, by ferry, by private boat, or it used to be at one point by helicopter. Remember when you used to land in Fisher Island?
Yeah, seaplane, helicopter. You can still land there in the Gulf on the fourth hull. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. And you're literally, 8 minutes to South Beach and all the craziness of South Beach.
Absolutely.
So tell people, well, you told them how we ended there, but what is sort of that infrastructure of what Fisher Island is? Because it is its own world. You have your own hotel. Tell us about all of that, because you still are the king of Fisher Island. You've probably sold more there than anyone else.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a great run. It'll be 30 years next year. I've been servicing the community.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, talk about feeling old. But yeah, it's a bubble. It is the ultimate bubble. It is the ultimate commodity of real estate in Florida that cannot be duplicated. The EPA will never allow a developer to dredge out another private island. This is not Dubai. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So it's 216 acres, a little over 850 residences right now. And that's very, like Michael said, one of the highest income zip codes in the country annually. And we have this wonderful world-class country club on property, world-class beaches. It's nirvana.
Is.
You're 7 minutes away from being into South Beach. You're 7 minutes away from going to the Causeway and watching a Miami Heat game and LeBron James back in the day.
Yeah.
And being in Miami, which, as we all know, is grown up before our eyes. It's a 24/7 super prime city now. So our residents on Fisheron like that kind of separation, to have that exclusivity and safety for them and their families, privacy. But they can go in and have these, Art Basel and the dinners and just everything that Miami brings to the table. It's right there for them. So it's a really cool dynamic.
I want your best Fisher Island story, one you can share actually,
Oh my
because
goodness.
I'm sure there's many you can't.
I always say that's my golden parachute, is to write the book with a ghostwriter. Best Fisher Island story. Let's do this. So back in 2000, right after the crash, things accelerated very quickly back in Miami. And as we know, a lot of the hedge funds and a lot of the European countries really gave a softer cushion to Miami than other places. And as things were starting to escalate, we had a lot of European buyers that were coming and they wanted large residences. And at the time, the newest building was a 2007 built building. And a lot of these residents had built two across to make a 7,000 square foot residence. We had this one buyer who said, I have to have one. And we said, well, there's only 6 that exist. The two just closed for around 8 million. And I just don't know if we can tempt any of the other 4. And he says, get it done. Just give me the contract signed. So we went to each of the 6 residents. Hey, we have a fantastic buyer from offshore, ready to close cash immediately on your terms. And we had one Mexican resident who said, I have no interest to sell, but if this guy's silly enough to pay 14.2 million, I'll do it. And I'll tell my wife later. And never a good start. And I said, well, fill in 14.2 and sign it. And I'm pretty certain you're going to have the money in the title account in 24 hours. And sure enough, the blank check deal, our buyer from International paid, the comps were 8. He was happy to pay 14. And we've done a lot of deals with blank checks in very unorthodox ways, because that's just the luxury business. And it's part of, what you and I love about the business, that it's very creative.
One of my first sales was on Fisher Island. It was almost a similar story, where it was a Russian client of mine that had come in and wanted one of the freestanding homes. And so it was one of the ones that was only one on the market at the time. And of course, it's sort of like his wife had come in and didn't like that one. So wanted one that of course wasn't on the market. So it was one of those old classic real estate stories. You get out of the car, you knock on the door. And it's sort of like, this is going to sound like a crazy story, but I have an interested client in the car that wants your house. And it was like, it's not on the market. It was like, yeah, I understand that, but what's the number? And so literally one of those things where a month later we had sold the house, and it was extraordinary. It's something about that, where if somebody wants Fisher Island, to your point, nothing else exists of it.
Well, for so many years, people would come out and they'd be like, well, I love this. What can I compare it to? What can I go to compare it to? I said, you can't. I said, if this is within you and your family and this is for your legacy, there's nothing that's going to compare it to it.
That's right.
And if it's not for you, there's amazing other communities in Miami and Key Biscayne and South Beach. We can explore that also.
Right.
But it's not Fisher Island. And like, everybody would always, after they go through the process, would be like, you were absolutely right. It was one of a kind, and it was either perfect for me and my family, or was perfectly not for me and my family, had better for me. And that's
and that's good too. That's good too. So when you actually write the book, do you remember The Philistines of the Hedgerow? That was all about the Hamptons. And when the person actually decided to start writing the book, the pseudonyms were a little bit too close to reality.
Right.
And people started figuring out who people were. Yeah. Actually, there's a lot more you can actually do in Fisher Island. So you probably shouldn't write the book.
For sure.
So now you're with a new company. You're with Side, and you're the managing broker of Florida and also the VP of operations for the state of Florida. Tell us a little bit about Side and how they found you.
Yeah, so it was kind of a little bit of, I found them a little bit. Again, being in the career for so long, this is 2000. 19 now. So I was 27, 28 years into this great run on Fisher Island. And I've been fortunate enough to do over 5,000 transactions on island, which is just
Wow.
mind boggling even to me doing it, to think of just how many ferry rides I've done over the years. And, but after everything, over time, you lose that passion. And, you can still help clients out that are near and dear to you, but to go in and fight for a listing was just not as exciting as it was 10 years ago or what have you.
Yeah.
Um, I had also previously been in another company. I was running the international division for ISG, a regional company, and enjoying that sphere of my career, doing both of these things as an independent broker and also for an executive. But I was really confident that the industry as a whole, for the realtors and for the clients, is kind of broken.
Right.
There's really a disalignment right now in terms of how the brokerages who are managing transactions and driving transactions are not truly giving the proper tools and benefits to realtors. So vis-a-vis, then the clients are not getting the proper kind of um, support. This is a
Yeah.
very big investment for everybody, right? That we work with as a purchaser. And furthermore, I just felt seeing it up front that a top producer, like friends that we have,
Yeah.
the executives were actually looking to get more money out of them rather than helping them make more money. So I started doing some consulting for some different tech companies. I was out at a luxury conference in Beverly Hills, and it was a typical CEO panel. I won't, go
Sure.
with the CEOs that were on the stage with their suits and ties, looking very sharp and basically saying nothing, nothing exciting, nothing dynamic to the crowd of 500. And this other gentleman is in there in a Patagonia and jeans and sneakers. And I didn't never heard of this person. I didn't know what the company was, but he was speaking exactly to what I felt was wrong.
Yeah.
Why doesn't a company get behind Michael, who is a rock star in our business, and propel Michael personally to get him to the next level of success, which he can then help his clients to success? So I flew out, and they flew me out the next week. I met some friends, and they flew me out to San Francisco. I started doing some consulting for them. I believed in their model, the people behind it, the investors, the goals. And, in October, they asked me if I wanted the opportunity to take this great model and make it Florida centric.
Wow.
And I jumped at the opportunity, and it's been a blast since then, shaping this great state and taking great top producers and taking them to the next level.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. There's so much disruption in our industry right
Yeah.
now, right? Especially after COVID. When you
Mm-hmm.
start sort of thinking about there's a reinvention almost of our industry, and there's still more to come, in my opinion, of
Absolutely.
really sort of like waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? The new normal.
And this was all in the works, but just think
Yeah,
about it. I mean, the ability to walk into a condo or a home and with your iPhone talk to someone across the world
that's
and
right.
have them have the confidence to make a bid, a very strong bid, and close on a property without even walking through it. These things were happening beforehand, and COVID kind of has accelerated some of this technology and this speed of transactions
Yes.
and what I believe quality of transactions and access moving forward. So a lot of our companies that are on the cutting edge are really helping out in a grand way, much faster than we could have dreamed.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And it'll be interesting to see how this evolves,
Yeah.
but there's still also that core of what's there, right? And you were talking about the 30 years that you've spent with one of the most expensive uber luxury zip codes, period. So what sort of advice would you give somebody that's trying to break into that ultra luxury market?
Yeah, great question, and I get that answer asked me a
I'm
lot.
sure you do. Yes.
Like, hey, can I shadow you for a couple months? And
Yes.
I'd love to, but on a
But
big,
no.
yeah. I just think it's first and foremost, I mean, I started this when I was in my 20s, thank goodness, you
Yeah,
know, so we can start doing the math, but, nonetheless,
the same math. It's okay.
it's the same math. I recognize very early that although these folks expect luxury, they expect excellence, they have really great checkbooks, they're people just like we
Yeah,
are. And it's that mutual respect. If you can break through all the nonsense and you can treat Michael as Michael wants to be treated, and respectfully, people will resonate.
that's right.
You need to care. You need to give a damn. that this is Michael's family and this is his legacy for his kids, his grandkids, whatever that could be that's shaping his why. And that goes for any commodity in real estate, right? So
That's right.
don't be intimidated if you're showing going from a $500,000 product to a $2.5 million product. It's the same motion. The other thing I always tell people is, you need to learn your product like everything else, whether it's the quality of cabinetry and floors and designers. It doesn't take that much to just kind of get up to speed as to what's going on in that sphere of the world. But again, people want to have confidence that you are the expert. They're hiring you to, ferry them on this transaction, which is a large investment for them. And they need to have confidence that you can relate to them and know what matters to them and to their world. And, that combination, I think, gets you a good head start. Working for a team, I think, is also a fantastic way to do that. If you can find a top producer who has a team structure and start getting some at bats, I think it's not the most instant gratification, but you will pay your dues. And if you're going to make it, I think you're going to have a much higher level of success that way.
That's why they want to come shadow you for 2 months.
I know.
But you know what? I think what you said is really important. It's the idea of being an advisor as
Yes.
opposed to being a transactional broker, right? Which so many of our colleagues are. And I think that's really the transition of that level of getting into that luxury market. Because in some cases, the greatest secret is that it's almost easier to deal with a luxury buyer than it is for someone who's, at sub-million, for example, because for them, it's a much more important sale, right? So there's a lot more details. It's a lot more of, again, a very general statement, but usually it's a lot more of what their net worth is in that home purchase. The more you get up on that scale, it's not their primary residence, it's their secondary, tertiary, property or more. And so for them, it's sort of like what's important as sort of like what ticks the boxes. Those boxes are less.
Sometimes it's just 181 days, right? We were just talking about
what are you talking about?
So, yeah.
It's so true. So tell me what the greatest lesson you've learned in your career thus far.
The greatest lesson, God, I've had so many, as the transaction, like I said, the transactions are transactions, but it's the people we meet that are just amazing individuals, and they're iconic in their field, or they're benevolent towards building hospital wings. And I have this one client from Toronto. He's in the Mining Hall of Fame. I mean, I didn't know it was the Mining Hall of Fame, but he's in there.
Okay.
He's built hospital wings, and we used to always, when he'd come down every winter, we would go for a walk. And we would go for a walk around Fisher Island's about a 5K, it's about 3 miles around, and me and Seymour would go around for about an hour and a half, just talking about life.
Yeah.
And he said, people are going to forget what you say. People are going to forget what you do, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And he said that to me in terms of a compliment. I took that very wholeheartedly from this incredible, amazing humanitarian. And it's kind of the way I try to lead my life. And I keep that as a focus. And I tell that to my daughter. My daughter's 11 years old. I tell her that all the time, that, you got to be careful what you do and what you say, but it's really important how people feel when you're around them. And that's what's going to be lasting. So that's
that. Yeah, because it is what matters, right? It's sort of like, look, we're in the people business, and that's all it is, right?
Yeah.
We deal with human beings, and we're dealing with really transactional opportunities for the next stage of their life. That's really important. That's an important role to really look at it. But you're not doing a sale. You're helping somebody in a transition in their life.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful statement. I love that. All right, so now a flip side. So that was the advice for people sort of coming into the ultra luxury. Someone just coming into the business today, it's like, we have been in this business for a while, you before me, but somebody coming into this business today, post-COVID, someone's coming in where it is now a seller's market. Someone doesn't even know what a buyer's market is, right? And so it's almost that false sense of reality where, remember, it was pre-crash, everybody were order takers, right? So early in like early 2000s in Miami, all you had to do was sort of write contracts. And so we're almost there again. We are there again.
Right.
Somebody coming into the industry now, 3 pieces of advice you would give them.
Oh, so first of all, be careful. So I'll
I
give you
love
two
that
stats.
one.
Yeah, I'll give you two stats. So in my role, I'm the managing broker. For each time we partner with someone, we build a new brokerage for them. I do the managing broker to get the liability and that job off their plate. They want to do deals and shape lives like we're talking about. So they don't have to worry about that. So I've got 28 broker licenses in the state of Florida and counting.
Wow.
So we get this big backlog in March, and we're talking to the state capitol, and they're like, this takes usually 3 weeks. Why is it 2 months? What's happening? They're like, we got in March 6,000 applications in the state of Florida for new agents, agents to brokers, new brokerages.
Oh my gosh.
So just like you're saying, people are expecting nowadays, just get your license. You're going to make at least 100 grand with your eyes closed. And then just today, I was watching at lunchtime on my app. Saw a CNN video. It was talking about the real estate market for newbies, and was highlighting a guy in Austin, Texas, right now, one of the hottest markets in the country. You know about. It's amazing, great town, love it. There are 8 times as many licensees in Austin than homes for sale. So,
There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with those stats, are there?
it's a little upside down. So they highlighted this one gentleman, great young kid, very smart, got his license. He's with Keller Williams. He got his license in October last year. He's not made one transaction.
Wow. What? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, because of the competition.
The competition is so stiff.
Yeah.
So in terms of, advice to someone who's going in, get with a team, do not try to do this on your own. It's timely, it's expensive, it's emotional. To have that support and have that kind of mentor. Again, there are plenty of top producers who work in that structure and are
Yes.
looking for new talent. I think it's essential. Another thing was way back in the day, my broker sent me to a Mike Ferry seminar.
I remember those.
So many of us have been there, and it's funny. I saw Mike again in Anaheim about 20 years later. He had the same stories, the same jokes, but the room was still packed.
That's right.
But the main thing I took away from those 2 days in Atlanta was, don't focus on the dollar value. Don't focus on the glamour of that deal. Focus on being in as many deals as possible. Try to make it as replicatable as possible. And yes, it's harder in today's market when there's such competition of 8-1. But when you do get into with a client and you're working with them, you need to make them important, but understand that that's not everything.
Mhm.
The more you can do on volume, you will gain experience, you will gain knowledge, you will gain confidence. And I think that's essential. And a lot of younger associates I find do 1 or 2 deals and they get immersed into that too deep,
Yes.
opposed to kind of looking forward and saying, this is a career, I need to build upon this, rather than celebrate these first 2.
Love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you've always had a global clientele, mostly because you're in a global destination, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I don't even know the number of countries that would be represented on Fisher Island, and really South Florida, because you do a lot of other things besides Fisher as well. But there's also the idea that you're very involved with ARIA, the Asian Real Estate Association of America, other organizations as well. So somebody that's looking to really sort of target that global audience, would you recommend these types of associations as a good start for someone? How do you recommend someone getting into a global audience or getting themselves noticed with a global audience?
Yeah, no, I think it's the ultimate way to do it. I mean, yes, we live in Miami. It's a very multicultural city. It's, we have the confluence between Canada coming down, Europe across the pond, South America coming up. It's what I fell in love with Miami back in 1990 and why I never left. It's an amazing, amazing city, and it's, again, finally growing up. But like you mentioned, ARIA, like I'm very, very committed and deep within the ARIA culture and leadership and to their mission. And I came in just like a lot of folks, curious. I am not Asian by descent. I saw the opportunity, of the Asian marketplace, how it's affected a lot of North American cities. Miami is the last major global city that is not really impacted. I challenge anybody anywhere to find another North American city that is, bigger than Miami, that has had less impact by Asians to date. It will become an Asian American city in the near future, and I wanted to learn. And I started going to different networking events and starting to learn and get to know some of these leaders. And it was amazing to see the level of their willingness to share.
Yes.
They're willing to share their expertise, their culture, their food, their music. When yes means no, no means yes. So many different things that just we wouldn't necessarily, grab onto on our own. But there's other associations. There's NAREP, and there's so many associations like this, and they are great. There's a lot of community focus behind all these associations. So again, that also is nice to step back from your success and give back. Whether it's sharing or whether it's advocating, in Washington D.C., whatever that looks like, that you can give back. I think that's very important for what we do to balance us. A lot of my associates, I always kind of kid around. I said, most top producers are transactional animals, right? Yeah. It's deal, 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 no listing, listing, listing. And there's not a lot of balance in a lot of the top producers' lives. And for me personally, and thankfully a lot of the colleagues that I've been with in a lot of these associations, that's a very important part of the balance of our life, and to kind of bring us back down. And then when you get back to that next transaction, it's that much more fruitful for us.
I want to stay on that topic of balance because you're very philanthropic, and I know that you're involved in many things. You're an ambassador for More Than Sport. Actually, tell us a little bit about that. I'd love to hear about that and your other efforts in that regard, because I love who you are as a human being, because you're one of those that really does balance that. And you're one of the guys that I know that just gives back a lot. Your family does. So I know I really admire you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, More Than Sport was kind of a game changer for me personally in a lot of regards. So I've always had massive energy. I've always, one of my quotes is always sleep is overrated. I just feel, you're only gonna be in your 20s once, you're only gonna be in your 30s once. Now I'm in my 50s, you're only gonna be in your 50s once.
That's
and
right.
It's all about, when I go like yourself, when we go to, a lot of these real estate conferences, if you're going to get on the plane and you're going to leave your family, do it right. Get into that breakfast meeting, get the most out of that day, pay attention, network. If there's an after hours party, go and get to know people at a different level, like just max it. But back in the 2000s, I used to be an endurance runner in high school and college. I started doing triathlons. And I got very, very passionate about it. So it was very much like from 5:30 in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning, I do my training, yada, yada. I was very successful in Olympic distance. So I was traveling around different parts of the country and world, on the weekends, doing this in the summertime. And I used to meet a lot of pros. It's a very unique sport, triathlon, because at the end of the day, it's only what you put into it, you get out of it, right?
Right.
It's one of the only sports that you will compete with world-class athletes at the exact same time, the exact same course. So I'm a golf fan. If you watched the US Open yesterday, they're not letting Donnie Pingaro go out and play with John Rahm on the US Open yesterday, right? You can't compete with professionals on their field at that time.
Sure.
So I got to know some of these pros, and this one pro, Chris Lieto, started this whole charity, More Than Sport. And the idea behind More Than Sport was you have all these usually demographically wealthy individuals coming into a city or a village to race, celebrate fitness, and have a great time. But what was the city really getting out of it? So he wanted to give back to each city that a race was going on. And we went down in Panama, down in the country, Panama City, got to swim in the Panama Canal. Very,
Wow.
very cool deal. Yeah. Just all these kind of cool things. And they had a mission. So 2 days, we went down with the Panamanian Navy, bussed us and helicoptered into this uncharted village that had river damage from a flood. And for 2 days, we built 2 homes. They were each 900 square feet for a family of 11 and 13 respectively.
Wow.
And I realized firsthand, when we landed in the helicopter, there was 3 and 5-year-olds coming to hug us who'd never met us, to pick up our bags, and they were taking care of the 1 and 2-year-olds because the parents were in the fields working,
Oh,
right? So for 2 days, we, after a race, go out there, 30 of us triathletes, and build these 2 homes. And it was such a little thing to do in our world,
oh,
but what an impact it made in their world,
of course.
right? So that was a lesson I learned, that, when you talk about charity and benevolence and giving back to your community, we're all busy. Fortunately, many of us are very successful, but it's those so little can do so much. And to take that kind of balance and find those cracks in our day that we can do that and give back, again, I think that makes us better human beings, and it makes everybody better for that purpose.
I love that, Donnie. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me, in the lens that you have now, right?
Yep.
What advice would you give your 10-year-old self?
Oh, my 10-year-old self. I have an 11-year-old daughter, so I'm giving a lot of advice
There you
daily.
go.
She's not listening too much some days. Uh, I think it's just about keeping perspective and understanding that other people on the other side have feelings too. And you really got to do everything you can in your power to keep that focused, and always treat people how you would want to be treated. And we try to do that day to day as an example for her. And there are some days where we have to kind of rewind that for her, and kind of put that in focus, saying, hey, mama and papa don't talk to people that way, or we would never do that, would we? So again, you try to live by example at this point for that 10-year-old self.
I love that. So I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
In your book of life,
Yeah.
what is this chapter called?
What is this chapter called? Let's see here. I was going to say never enough, but that's not good for this time in my life. I think it's more, it's time to elevate others. I think that's this chapter right now. I've done the 24/7, 365, as back and forth on the ferry, living and breathing transactions, doing hundreds of transactions solo myself. It's not about that anymore. It's about finding the real good people in the world, leveraging my experience, and kind of try to put those dots that are out there for all of us, that even those great people don't see, put them together and take them to the next spot.
I love that.
Yeah.
Donnie, it's so good to see you.
Likewise.
It is really so amazing. Every time we see you, we just pick up from where we left off. And it's been now a 17-year sort of, friendship, and it's been lovely. And thank you for all that you do. I love the stories that you shared. Thank you for sharing your story with everyone. And I can't wait to see you in person again soon.
Look forward to it, Michael. Thanks very much for the opportunity. Great seeing you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all of you for listening. This has been the Global Luxury Real Estate Mastermind with me, your host, Michael Valdez.